So we'll now get started. So officially, welcome to webinar number 3, Communicating Values. I would like to welcome our presenter, Bryn Sadownik, and she's with the Vancity team. Bryn leads the Demonstrating Value Initiative, which supports social enterprises to plan, manage, and communicate the value of their work, and in particular, the measure of social and environmental impact. Prior to joining Vancity, Bryn worked as a consultant and a researcher at Simon Fraser University, leading numerous projects for government, private sector, and nonprofit organizations in impact assessment and cost-effectiveness analysis. Bryn is the co-author of the award-winning book, The Cost of Climate Policy, from the University of British Columbia Press, 2007, and other publications, most recently as a contributor to Accounting for Social Value, University of Toronto Press. So I'd like to welcome Bryn to the panel, and we are going to now carry on, and I'm going to hand the controls over to Bryn. I'd like to ask one thing, though. Before you sign off, once the presentation's done, I have a quick little 2-minute recap that we need to go through, and we need to talk about the consulting that comes after each webinar and the communication for that, okay? So without further ado, here is Bryn.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here, wherever here may be, across the province. I just first want to start by, I know that the title of the webinar was how to communicate your value to funders, but what I'll be talking about tonight is more broadly of how you can track and express your success. And this can be in terms of communicating your value to funders, but it can also be in terms of communicating that value to your vendors, to customers, as well as understanding your performance in terms of how you are managing the market and how you're planning for the future. So this evening, the way I'm going to break down the webinar is to first talk more generally about, what are some issues and how you track and express your success. How do you go about doing that? Because there's a lot in this world, and I think it's important to just see how it's relevant to what you do. And then the second part will be really to look at Farmers Market Impact Toolkit that was developed within Vancity Community Foundation within the Demonstrating Value Initiative. A couple really developed the summer of 2012, and that's available through our website. Also, if anybody does have any particular issues or questions that they'd like covered, feel free to raise your hand in the virtual way, and I'd be happy to make sure that I address them as part of this webinar. So I'm just, oh, there we go. Sorry, wasn't sure how to move my screen forward. So my starting point is really like to look at what is measurement, because I think it's something that we've often heard, what's an impact measure or metrics, what are your metrics, your key performance indicators, there's a lot of words around it, and I think, what might come to mind immediately is, okay, this spreadsheet or this bar chart, but what I really think is important to step back and think in terms of tracking and expressing your success. I think of it in terms of that, as we're any kind of organization, even your own life, that there's all this information that you take in and communicate, and for different purposes, and making decisions and talking to people and the like. And measurement for me is really to be able to focus in on some key pieces of information and track them more systematically, and so that it can be used quite purposefully in some kind of communication or in a meeting or various forums. And so measurement, for many people, it isn't just about numbers, but it can also mean, equally narrative. It can mean pictures. It can mean different, especially in this day and age, different types of media as well. And fundamentally, measurement has to support something. Numbers have to be interpreted and used. And what I really think this is about, and the farmers market inspired me to find a tree of knowledge that is about finding the knowledge in it and applying that knowledge and sharing that knowledge, so that measurement in a vacuum is meaningless, and it has to really be supportive of something that is going to move forward and make a difference. So turning now to the basics of measurement, I think it's fundamentally three things. The first question is, well, who is this for? It's for somebody to do something with, and this can be a board of directors, it can be customers, it can be vendors, it can be maybe a municipality, a policymaker, but who wants this information? Who cares about this? Secondly, what are you measuring? What is it that you want to know and show? And this really means that, what do you want to know in terms of decision making or planning, and what do you want to be able to show in terms of what your value is in the community? And that can be to a funder, or going back to that first question of, who do you want to make a case to? And the third basic issue in measurement is, how are you going to do this? How do you collect the information? What are some of the systems that are used? And often there's natural points where measurement makes sense to do. And then the second part of how is, how do you use this information? And I think this is a part of measurement that has gotten has often had less emphasis, but there's really important to consider, like, how do you actually incorporate this into a meeting, into communications, into funding applications, if that's something that your market goes after. So really these three pieces, who, what, and how, are just really the starting points of measurement and the endpoints. And so I just want to move now to you and what your own needs for measurement are. And I believe that prior to this webinar, Chris sent out a worksheet that had space for you to put down what you would like to know and show about your market. And I've used that question in workshops that I've done with different community organizations, and it's fairly easy to discuss. But in terms of a webinar, I thought I would try and, just because it's kind of a weirder form to do that, and to set up a couple of polls that may capture what you've written there. So Chris, if you could just launch the first poll, and I'll just explain what that is.
Okay, and when I launch this, if everybody could just put their hand up in the virtual room there to acknowledge that you're seeing this poll. It comes up. All right, everybody's seeing the poll. Great.
Okay, and what I've included there are just 4 possible answers for what you'd like to be able to, and I actually can't see the poll, so I think the first one is about what you want to be able to know about in terms of decision making and planning. And if that's something that you may have, that resonates with you, and something that you maybe wrote down in your worksheet before or appeals to you now, just click on that response, and the poll's set up so you can click on as many as make sense. And if you do click on other, may ask you afterwards what that may be.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll give you a few seconds just to click on the answers that you want, and then we're going to just click on the submit button at the bottom of the poll. 38% of you have voted. 48%. Ooh, looking good, looking good. And then we're going to close the poll and show the results. We're stalled at 95%. Who's not voting? Okay, we're going to close the poll in 6 seconds. And there we go. Okay, so now the polls are, so would you like me to share the results now, Bryn?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay. So everybody can see the results.
Okay, and how would I be able to see the results?
Well, you should be able to see them as the presenter.
Or maybe you could just tell me about them.
Okay,
If
so
that
what
would
we
also
have
work.
is how do we increase visibility and public awareness? 95% of the people said they clicked on that one. How can we expand the number and variety of vendors? 65%. How can we be more financially sustainable? 70%. How can we appeal more to policymakers and funders? 70%. And we have an other of 40%.
Okay. Well, I would be interested just if the people that did indicate an other, um, what that other was.
Okay, so what we can do in that case is I'm just going to take the hands down. If one or two of you like to put your hands up, if you indicated other, and we'll just take a quick little one here. So first we'll go to Shireen and find out what her other was. Hi, Shireen, how are you?
Hi, Chris.
So what is your other if you voted for other?
We want to know if we are offering the products that reflect the needs of the community.
Okay. And we'll also, thanks very much for that, Shireen. And then we'll also go now to Sharon. Hi, Sharon, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. What was your other?
Our other is, what impact are we having on community development?
Okay. That's a good one there. And then we'll take one more here. We'll pop up to Barb. 1 second here. Barb, what was your other?
Our other was we'd like to know if we are doing a good job of differentiating ourselves from other similar markets in our region.
Excellent. Okay. Great. Thank you very much. So that gives you an indication of where we're at with that, Bryn.
Yeah, and that's really interesting to hear the very specific information needs that are articulated there. And I think it's just really important when you are looking to do some more systematic measurement to really see this as a starting point that you especially can gather, like ask enough people that are stakeholders in your market, what is it that they want to know, and use that as a starting point to then look at measurement. And so the second poll really focuses in on what do you want to show about your market in terms of the value that, for example, you create in the community. And so, Chris, if you want to launch this other poll.
Okay, we'll do that
the second
now.
poll.
So here's the second poll, and select one of the following. We are inclusive and accessible to a diverse range of people. We want to build community. We help preserve local farmland. We increase food security in the community. So if you folks could go ahead and do your voting on that, that would be wonderful. Brendan, I think something's juggling around on your headset there.
Oh, yeah, I just took it off for a second.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, so we've got 100% have voted. We're going to close the poll. Excellent. And let's share the results. So the poll results, what do you want to show about the value you create was the question. The results are, we are inclusive and accessible to a diverse range of people, 10%. 52%, we want to build community. 5%, we help preserve local farmland. And 33%, we increase food security in the community. So no others on that one.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting here too that just based on the two questions, that a lot of what you expressed that you want to measure is quite relevant to management.
Muted. Unmuted.
Bryn?
I'll just assume that people can hear me. There's just some message that I was muted.
Yeah,
Yep.
you were. So we somehow
Hello?
or another, we just got muted here. So go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. No, I just wanted to. It was interesting to hear that like of the second poll that there was overall some of the responses were a bit less, and seeing that as something that was important to measure. But I think it really reflects that fundamentally measurement really supports a lot of decision making that can is relevant to management or planning, and those very questions around being able to look at financial sustainability, look at increasing the visibility of the market, but that also being able to demonstrate value externally is also relevant and important. And I think that definitely building community is a important part of that. So I just want to take what we've started here as really defining what information needs are, and look at how that can be fleshed out in terms of what you can measure around that and how you can track that information.
Okay, Bryn, can you just check and make sure that your presentation is showing up on your screen? Because there we go.
Yeah, it is now. So I've just clicked show my screen. So
Okay.
you should be able to see my screen now.
Perfect. Thank you.
And that's so everybody else can see my screen now. I'll just
Yes.
Assume that this is the case. Yeah. Yeah. So this slide really speaks to when you have identified something that you do want to be able to show. In this case, the example here is farmers markets build community. That often to respond to that is really a matter of gathering some pieces of information that paint a picture of how markets build that community, and that and the point that I brought up earlier, like measurement can be about numbers, can be something that's derived from some kind of survey, but it also can be information like the photo on the bottom right, or for example, some going around and asking people at the market what they see, how they see the market builds community, and be able to share that and document that. So really here you have how many customers, how long they're spending at the market, and painting a picture that people are spending quite a long time, that they're socializing, that when they are going to the market they are going to do other things within the community, so in a sense contributing to the vitality of that community, and just seeing that it's a really key part to being able to meet neighbors and being able to come to that community. And so with any of those starting points that you've gone through and really identified, it's possible to often just pinpoint and brainstorm ideas for what you can measure to show that. And often by looking at what you might already be doing, or you might have volunteers that could ask people, that it's often quite useful just really step back and take the time and think, well, how can we just gather some of this information systematically? I'm just trying to get to the next slide. There we go. And again, this is an example that's looking more at the management and planning of the market, but looking at some issues around to what degree the expenses are covered by the operations of the market, some vendor concerns that might have been determined from a survey, just some of the turnover rate of vendors. And basically being able to look at customers in terms of what they would like to see happen in the market in the future. So again, it's that being able to pull together different pieces of information and present that in a format that is quite useful to use in a forum like a board meeting, or use in a pamphlet, for example, to customers of how you see that you understand what the concerns are and that you'd like to address them. And so I've, in the Demonstrating Value Initiative, call this a performance snapshot. So really a snapshot that covers some of the key pieces of information that essentially you want to know and be able to show. And I guess that the key thing to stress here is that, you know, it's easy to get into measurement for measurement's sake, but it's very important, as this case with Gilbert, that it's not just the pretty pictures. So here he's, you know, I didn't have anything useful, so I made a pie chart, and people are ooh, ah, and so there's a certain dazzling factor to numbers, but it's really important that this is about really gathering information that is going to support something practical and useful in your organization. So I'd just like to stop it there, because at this point in the webinar I want to turn to the Farmers Market Impact Toolkit, which is a collection of tools that makes it pulls together a lot of those what do you want to know and show those information needs, and has a collection of surveys and communication tools that presents that information. But I just was wondering if anybody does have some questions or would like some clarification about what I've covered so far in the webinar.
All right, so we're looking around, see if anybody has any questions so far. They can put their hand up and we'll take a couple of them. No, we're doing an excellent job. We have no hands up, so we'll carry on, Bryn.
Okay, great. So the toolkit is, as I mentioned, is a collection of survey tools, spreadsheet analysis file, and templates for how you can communicate the information. And that can be found at the website that's noted at the bottom of the screen, demonstratingvalue.org, resources, Farmers Market Toolkit. And there's also information on the website about how the toolkit was developed, and that's under Demonstrating Value Projects, which you just see at the top. But this was developed in association with the BC Association of Farmers Markets, starting in 2012. And I actually was, I was on maternity leave during that time, and a lot of the development of the toolkit was done by Annie Lambla and Garth Hewell, and it was piloted with 9 farmers markets, which 6 were able to pilot the surveys and do the data analysis files over the course of one summer market season. And so, as I mentioned, the parts of the toolkit are a collection of templates that show how you can communicate the information, and it pulls together information around those themes that some of them were covered in the poll around community development, around food security, around certain issues around market management and planning. And then there's a collection of surveys that basically ask information of the different stakeholders of the farmers market, so of customers, of vendors, of the market manager, and of other groups in the community. And then the other piece of this toolkit is a data analysis file that pulls together the results of the survey along with a few other pieces of information that then can be directly used in the template, in these communication templates. And there's the fourth part in orange is there's a guide that talks about how these pieces fit together and how this can be used.
So, Brent, if I could, I'd just like to ask a quick question here before you go on to the next slide. When we did our assessment, we asked the question, how many of you are familiar with the Farmers Market Toolkit? If you could all just raise your hands and if you are in fact familiar with this toolkit that we just went through on this presentation. That would be great. Awesome. Great to see. Sorry for the interruption, Bryn. Carry on.
Oh, and actually, I'd be curious to know how many people indicated just now that they were familiar with the toolkit.
And we just added a bunch when you asked that question, too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the toolkit itself, it's fairly exhaustive in a way in that it covers
now 6.
6. It covers quite a range of things that a market may want to know and show, and so in this slide it sort of describes some of those issues that it covers. And so the surveys all cover these issues. They all feed into gathering the information that can be communicated about those issues. So it's a fairly comprehensive toolkit. And I guess I'll just go back to that there are ways to really zero in on just parts of like just some of those questions that might be of interest the most. And that will be in the conference that's coming up in Vancouver at the end of February. I'll be holding a workshop that will go more into the toolkit, and I can show there how to use a toolkit to really answer specific questions or pull pieces of it. But in general, if a market was interested in applying the toolkit, the estimated time is about 60 hours to do this work. And this just gives a breakdown of some of the pieces of work that need to be done. So some of the actual, like the most intensive part is surveying customers. The vendor survey was, I think, a little more straightforward in being an online survey, but the customer survey was done mainly through volunteers at the market. And then there definitely is like a piece in being able to pull the information together and create those performance snapshots that can then be used as a communication tool for the market. It's also useful to note that just in gathering this information, it can be used for a lot of different purposes. So it can pieces of it could be used for to be incorporated into communications work or some other kind of publication. Could be used if you are applying for funding that could make it quite straightforward to provide some of that information, so that it really is just a means to gather some key information with this basically incorporating a lot of the work that's been done out there, across North America into a toolkit, just to have some of those key measures so you don't have to hunt them down or figure out what they might be. So that's the key information I want to cover through this webinar, and I guess it'd be best at this point just to turn it over to specific questions of, if there's something that you'd like me to cover in more detail, or specific questions that you might have about what I've presented today.
Okay, so what we'll do for that, and we have a couple of questions that were in, but they're not really typed in, but they're not really relevant to that. So if you have a question, we've got the time for it. Please raise your hand in the virtual room there, and we will get to you. We'll unmute you and you can ask the question. While we're waiting for some questions to come in, just a little reminder that we have this webinar is a bit of a teaser because we're going to be doing a presentation on the Friday before the conference, as Bryn referenced, that will be more of a workshop and an in-depth look at how you can actually make this this toolkit benefit your market. So be prepared to come and enjoy that one on the Friday morning before. So we're going to go to Shireen right now. She's got a question. Shireen, go ahead.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Bryn. Our market is wondering how we can get the local municipality to become a key stakeholder in the market.
So your question is how to engage them in the market. I guess the question would be like in what ways are you communicating with them now or engaging them, and how you'd like to improve on that, and if there's certain issues you think that would engage them. If it is community building, if it is revitalization of a certain part of like where the market's located, of that neighborhood, if it's like finding just the issue that matters to them that the market is able to touch on, and in doing that and identifying that, then working through ways that you can show that to them. So it could be a way to, but is understanding their needs too, of what they might want to, what facet they might be interested in.
So Shireen, just on that question, I'm a little bit familiar with your market. You have the new community building that's going up there. Are you folks are an integral part of that, right? You're going to be able to operate out of there?
The municipality just received some funding to give the go-ahead for a community barn, which will have 17 to 18 users, community groups, and we just want to make sure that we have a stronghold, a strong presence in that community barn. I guess the fear is that what we do on one particular evening during a particular time during the week at the farmers market, that what other community groups do the rest of the time in that community barn doesn't dilute our process.
Right, yeah. And so, Bryn, did you get that sort of question and answer there?
I don't quite understand. So the community barn will be in addition to the farmers market?
Well, it'll be something that's a new building that the farmers market will actually operate in. And there's just a concern about whether or not other things that take place within that building will negatively impact the farmers market. So it's really, I think, about bringing the stakeholders together in that instance. And I think I understood Bryn correctly. It was really starting the dialogue with the municipality by saying, what is it that you are looking for us to provide for input into this? And then here's what we're looking for needs.
And I guess too would just be able to articulate what the market brings as well, like just that like some of the differentiators, or try to zero in on like just what type of value they might might be interested in seeing from the market. I guess without understanding more about the situation, it's hard for me to comment.
I think this is a fairly common question with a lot of markets that I've spoken to in this project as well. It's, starting that relationship with a stakeholder like the municipality and making them understand the value that the farmers market brings to the community as not just as, providing food, but also to the municipality, because they provide that integral service, and it's an integral part of the community planning process. So I think by going through the Farmers Market Toolkit and being able to, from that, articulate exactly what it is that you are, how you are benefiting your community, then you're going to have a lot more positive dialogue with them. Because honestly, municipal governments, speaking from experience, do not understand value very much from outside organizations. They're pretty focused on what it is that they're providing.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'll just check and
And I
see.
think, yeah, and I think, certain issues around just being able to animate public spaces, potentially just the connection with preserving local farmland, or like the local nature of farmers markets, that might be different than some other type of a building that may seem like it's like a farmer's market, but not really. That's just a few ideas.
Okay. I had another question come in here, and I'm not sure if this is in regards to this survey. This is coming from Sharon. In the results of the surveys or questionnaires, what indicates a percentage or a pass or a fail, how the farmer's market is doing on that indicator? For example, economic success. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to unmute Sharon here and ask if you can just clarify that. Is that specific to this webinar or the survey that we did before?
Well, from the toolkit, if you take one of the indicators, if you wanted to do the economics or food security and sustainability, so if you went and did the surveys or the questionnaires were there, and then I guess I'm asking, how would you analyze that, and in what shape does that information come back to you? Does it give your market an idea of how you are doing that task or not? Like, I'm not familiar with the toolkit enough to know how that information comes back, how we would interpret it.
Mm-hmm. So the toolkit works so that the data analysis files pulls together whatever surveys you're able to complete with customers or vendors, and so the strength of the information depends on just also how many the sample of those surveys. But the analysis file pulls those together, so it is very much in the form of like an indicator or a figure or something that there's sort of different levels of complexity depending on what it is that the certain area that it's looking at. But in terms of like interpreting it, I think, I mean, some of the, what is a good vendor turnover rate? What is that often, I mean, information to be useful often has to have some context. And so one of it is, understanding it over time, if you're able to look at vendor turnover, from 3 years ago to now, and is it decreasing or increasing, and pulling together some of the pieces of information of why that might be, that you look at another piece of information that suggests, okay, we moved to this different, we included this rural now, and that's reduced the turnover, or that you use other pieces of information with the toolkit to interpret it. So that's like one way. The other would be that, I mean, at the present, there's a potential with something like this, if many markets were to implement it, that you can benchmark information. And there's a number of like industry associations that will gather data from their members and offer some kind of benchmarking system just to help markets be able to gauge where they are and what they're doing. And that, I mean, at this point isn't part of this, but it could be something in the future if that's of interest, to the members, and that's for your association to look at. And I mean, sometimes too, where you do see you're able to measure something over time, and you get a sense of where you want to go, it's possible to establish targets too, and that's what many businesses will do, and decide that they want to increase revenues by 20%, and hopefully that 20% idea comes from something, and often fits into some thinking and planning for the market. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it gives me an indication of sort of how that information will look once we get to the point of being able to analyze it and then utilize it to make decisions.
Great.
Okay, thanks very much, Sharon. We have another question that came in, typed in here because the mic's not working for Vicky from Comox. But her question is, she's found that using the toolkit with just a few responses, 12 or so, skews the toolkit considerably. And she's just wondering if you're available for questions or support as you work through with the toolkit.
Yeah, I'm certainly available for questions for anybody that is using the toolkit or wanting to like anything that since I wasn't directly involved in creating the toolkit, I can also forward any questions to Annie, who was more directly involved. And in terms of using it and getting a limited number of responses, that the strength of being able to validly use that information depends on just what kind of sample and how many people you're able to survey. Yes, does that answer your question?
I think so. I don't have a response typed in here yet, but I guess one of the other things we could do is kind of push her a little bit towards the workshop on Friday before the conference, because, well, we'd love to have Vicky there, so. Because we'll be able to definitely go into that a bit more during that workshop.
Yeah, I think it also, the number of responses depends on also like how the information is going to be used and what it's for. So in some cases, if you do want to get some, asking, for example, customers what the market means to them and getting some information that you might get some good testimonials or things to be able to use. It's not statistically valid information that you can, use, but it's still useful in a sense for, some communications that you do. But like other types of indicators, you really do need a solid number of responses to be able to legitimately act on it or use it.
Okay, and I've got another one here. Just trying to get it to show probably. Tabitha from Coquitlam is asking, can you walk us through using the toolkit if you have a specific indicator you would like to know? How do you know what questions to ask? And Tabitha, I've actually unmuted you here, so you can be part of that response in the discussion.
Well, that's something that we'll probably be covering in the, as part of the pre-conference session. But there's a means in the data analysis file that all there's the indicators that come out of the toolkit reference back to specific questions, and so there's this master sheet within the Excel file that provides that link, kind of which indicator relates to which question and relates to which piece in the performance snapshot template. So that's really the means that you can use to customize the toolkit, and that's something that I'll be going into as part of that session.
All right. Does that answer your question, Tabitha?
I think so. It was, I think, a little bit kind of like what Vicky's, the point that Vicky was making was that if you're not asking the right questions, the toolkit really skews the results. And it's that understanding what questions to ask is depending upon what it is that you're trying to find out. And I know we're using a really vague examples here, but yeah, so it's just kind of understanding knowing more clearly that if I want to know the impact that X is making, that our farmers market is making about X, like what are those questions that you should be asking to get that result?
Okay.
Yeah, and there's the means to trace that within the toolkit. And I think like initially when we were trying to set it up, we wanted it to be more modular, that okay, this is the question we're asking, this is this like just to be able to almost assemble your own survey based on the questions you're asking. But what or practically was developed was something that is just more integrated. And but there really is and again, that's something that I do want to go over in the session, just a way to pinpoint, you know, based on, you know, I want to be able to show some things around community development, in particular, you know, increasing the number of connections people are making in their community. There's a means to filter out the indicators, to go, okay, these ones specifically speak to that, and then to look back at, okay, this is where the survey, what specific surveys, what questions lead to that answer. So, I mean, that hopefully sheds a bit of light, and if it is something that you want to be able to do, I'm happy to talk about that, you know, further, you know, if you wanted to contact me directly.
Okay, great. How does that answer your question a bit there, Tabitha?
Yep.
All righty, that's groovy. Do we have any other questions that are coming through? I don't have any typed up here. We're looking like we're getting pretty close to the end of the webinar process here. If I don't see any hands come up in the next little bit, I'm just going to move it over to wrapping it up as we hit that magical 7:55 marker. And I'm not seeing any more questions coming in. That's great. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take back the presentation from Bryn. So if she could just send the presentation, or you can just leave it on you, Bryn. I'll just take this moment to thank you, Bryn, very much, and remind everybody that we do have a more in-depth analysis. It's a couple of hour process to go through the entire toolkit and to be able to actually go through the different metrics and really answer the questions in depth that we are going through. I did have one question come through that was asking about, you know, a discussion with other market managers about how to start up a market, and I understand that Carly has some meetings coming up in on Thursday. Carly, there's going to be an opportunity for some consultation on this afterwards as part of the program if you enrolled in that part of it. So we can do that through the email process. We don't really have the ability to hold everybody together for this for that, because it's off the subject of this. And there is a guide that's available. It's the within the BCAFM website on starting a farmers market. But we can connect offline via email, and I can direct you in that way. So if that'll help you out there. If not, I'll just take this chance to, you know, again, thank Bryn very much for coming in. So Bryn, thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Excellent. Okay, and Bryn, I'm just going to mute you for a second while I do a quick little wrap up of everybody else. And Bryn, if you want to leave that, you can exit the webinar. But if not, we'll chat for a minute afterwards. Folks, I just want to remind everybody that we have a very important part of this. If you signed up for the consultation or the mentoring as part of this webinar series, you get 1 hour of one-on-one consultation with me after each webinar. So after each webinar, I send out an email that goes to the people that are listed as the lead on for this project. So it may not be you if you were not listed as the lead, but you have to get in touch with that lead so that we can then spend an hour with each of you to go through any questions that you may have had that after you were thinking about it, often what will happen is that when you finish a webinar, a day or so later, it's like, oh, what do we even talk about? So we will definitely be able to help you with that. So it's important for you to respond to those emails. I made 3 separate emails and a bunch of phone calls over the last 2, and we didn't quite get the number of people that participated in the webinar being able to take advantage of the consultation. So this is part of the thing. This is your responsibility. You have to respond to that. And I look forward to spending the time with you on it. Also, a little push. There was an email that went out just on the conference that's going to be at the end of February, beginning of March for the BCAFM conference, and that is in Vancouver. And of course, on Friday morning and afternoon, we're having some separate workshops. One of them is going to be a networking session with farmers markets. It's an excellent process. We're going to follow that with a little bit of a social. So all the information for that is on the website as well. Yeah, so thank you very, very much. And unless we have any other questions coming up for me specifically, I can, yes, Vicki, it is with each webinar. We can let you go. And if not, please feel free to contact me. You all have my email. It's chris@chrisquinlan.ca. And I can answer any questions you have for that. I'll be sending out the invitation for the consultation in the next day, and we will go from there. So once again, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. And our next webinar is coming up, I believe, on February 6th. It is, it's in February, so there's not one at the end of this month, but the next one. So look in your inbox for that registration, and thank you again. Ciao now. So, Bryn.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Good. Okay, so that went well. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seemed on time.
Yes, we nailed that one.